Part 1. Induction. Close your eyes. Imagine you're holding a single piece of straw. One thin piece of straw, dry and golden, almost nothing. Feel its weight, which is barely a weight at all. Feel its texture, rough and smooth at once. Feel how light it is, how small, how ordinary. Now imagine that this piece of straw is the beginning of everything. This is a story about a young man who had nothing, and about what happens when you hold nothing and walk forward anyway. Let the story begin. Part 2. The Young Man at the Temple. Long, long ago, in the countryside of Japan, there lived a young man named Taro. He was poor, not temporarily poor, not poor through misfortune or bad luck that would soon change. He was simply poor. He had been born poor. He had grown up poor. He worked hard and stayed poor. This is how it was for many people. He was not, however, unhappy. He was fundamentally a good-natured person. He found things to be curious about. He helped his neighbors when he could. He noticed the way the light changed in the evenings. He was, in short, someone who was paying attention to the world, even when the world wasn't paying much attention to him. But one autumn, something shifted in him. He had been working the fields of a wealthy farmer all season. The harvest was done. The coins he had earned were not enough. They were never enough. He sat outside his small house in the evening. He looked at his hands. Then he looked at the sky. Something, some feeling, made him get up and walk to the temple. He didn't have a specific prayer. He didn't know what to ask for. He simply walked, as people sometimes do when they need to be somewhere other than where they are. He arrived at the temple as the stars were coming out. He went inside. He sat. He bowed. He didn't know how long he sat there. At some point, he felt something, not a voice, not a light, a feeling, like a door opening very slightly in his chest, and with it, a single thought, clear and specific, as if it had been placed there by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Take whatever you find in your hand when you leave, and keep trading, keep walking, don't stop. That was all. It wasn't exactly a divine message. It wasn't exactly a dream. It was more like a direction. Taro sat with it for a while, and then he got up, bowed again, and walked toward the door. On the way out, he tripped. His hand shot out to catch himself. When he steadied, there was something in his hand. He looked at it. A piece of straw. Just one. Ordinary, thin, golden piece of straw. Part 3. The First Trade. Taro walked away from the temple with his piece of straw. He felt slightly foolish. He also felt something else, something that was related to curiosity. A piece of straw. What does one do with a piece of straw? He was thinking about this, walking along the road in the early morning, when a dragonfly flew past him. It buzzed around his head, veered, flew away, came back, hovered. Taro looked at it. It was a large dragonfly, iridescent wings, the color of old bronze, very beautiful. He reached out and, with a patience he hadn't known he had, he caught it very gently. It sat in his palm for a moment, wings still. He tied a very thin piece of straw around one of its legs. Gently, carefully, not hurting it. The dragonfly rose. It flew in small circles above his head, the straw trailing behind it like the world's smallest flag. Taro walked on. He hadn't gone far when he met a young woman walking with a small child. The child, perhaps 3 years old, saw the dragonfly immediately. The child's face, which had been ordinary and a little tired, transformed entirely. The mouth opened. The eyes went enormous. The small hands reached. "Dragonfly," the child said. The young woman looked at Taro apologetically. "I'm sorry," she said. "He loves dragonflies." Taro looked at the child's face. He thought about the feeling he had had in the temple, about trading, about walking forward. "Would you like it?" he said to the child. The child looked at him, then at the dragonfly, then back at him. Slowly, carefully, the child nodded. The young woman looked embarrassed. "We have nothing to give you," she said. "That's all right," Taro said. He transferred the dragonfly carefully to the child's outstretched hand. The child held it, mouth still open, eyes still enormous. The young woman reached into her bag. She pulled out 3 mandarin oranges. "Please," she said, "and take these." Taro looked at the oranges. They were bright as small suns. He took them. He bowed. He walked on. 3 mandarin oranges from 1 piece of straw. Part 4. The second trade. The road led through a forest. The morning light came through the trees in long shafts. The air smelled of pine and cold water. Taro walked with the 3 mandarin oranges in his bundle, thinking about nothing in particular. Around midday, he came to a place where a group of people had stopped by the road. A woman was sitting on a stone, fanning herself. Several others stood around her with expressions of concern. Taro stopped. "Is everything all right?" he asked. One of the standing figures turned. "My mistress is unwell," he said. "She's been faint since morning. We've been walking since dawn. She needs something. Her throat is very dry." Taro looked at the woman on the stone. She was pale. Her lips were dry. She did look genuinely unwell. He reached into his bundle. He brought out the 3 mandarin oranges. He held them out. "These are fresh," he said. "The juice is good when you're thirsty." The manservant took the oranges. He peeled one quickly and held it out to his mistress. She ate it. Then another. By the 3rd, Some color had come back to her face. She looked up at Taro. She had the face of someone who is usually reserved, but is currently too grateful to be reserved. "Thank you," she said. Her manservant reached into a bag. He brought out a length of silk cloth, fine silk, the color of deep water, worth considerably more than 3 mandarin oranges. "Please," he said to Taro, "take this." Taro took the cloth. He bowed. He walked on. A length of fine silk cloth, from 3 mandarin oranges, from 1 piece of straw. Part 5. The Third Trade. The road came out of the forest and into open farmland. In a field, Taro saw a horse. The horse was lying down, which is not in itself unusual, but the way it was lying down, the quality of stillness, the closed eyes, the heaviness of its breathing, suggested that it had been lying down for some time and was in difficulty. A farmer stood nearby, watching the horse, with the expression of a man who has exhausted his options. Taro climbed the fence. "What happened?" he asked. The farmer explained. The horse had collapsed that morning. It couldn't stand. The farmer didn't know why. He had work to do. The horse wasn't dying. Exactly. But it was not well. And a horse that wouldn't stand was a horse that couldn't work. Taro crouched beside the horse. He looked at it carefully. He wasn't a veterinarian. He didn't have special knowledge, but he had grown up around working animals. He knew how they moved when they were right and how they lay when they weren't. He put his hand on the horse's flank. He talked to it very quietly, just talking. After a while, the horse opened one eye, then the other. It moved its head. Taro talked some more, very slowly, with Taro's hands steadying its back legs. The horse gathered itself, rolled, tried, fell back, tried again, and stood. It was shaky, but it was standing. The farmer stared. "I've been trying for hours," he said. Taro didn't know what he had done differently. Maybe nothing. Maybe the horse had just been ready. He gave the horse water. He rubbed its nose. He talked to it some more. The farmer watched all of this. When Taro finally climbed back over the fence, the farmer followed him. "That horse is yours," the farmer said. Taro turned. "I don't need a horse," he said. "I don't care what you need," the farmer said. "That horse is yours. If you hadn't come along, I'd have had to sell it to the knacker. It's worth far more than that. Take it." Taro took the horse. He also gave the farmer the length of silk cloth, which seemed fair, a horse, from a length of silk, from 3 mandarin oranges, from 1 piece of straw. Part 6. The Road with the Horse. Walking with a horse is different from walking alone. The horse was a bay gelding, sturdy, quiet. He had recovered well from whatever had ailed him. He walked beside Taro with the even, calm pace of an animal that had been well treated for most of its life. Taro hadn't named horses before. He thought about it for a while. He settled on Mugi, which means wheat, because of the color. They walked together through the afternoon. Taro talked to Mugi. He explained where they were going, which was nowhere specific. He explained what he was doing, which was walking and trading and not stopping. He explained the piece of straw, which had started all of this. Mugi listened with the patient expression of a horse who has learned that humans talk a great deal and it costs nothing to let them. Part 7. The Fourth Trade. Toward evening, Taro came to a large estate. The wall was high. The gate was impressive. The garden, visible through the bars, was beautiful. A man was standing outside the gate. He was well dressed, or had been. Currently his clothing was dusty, and his expression was the expression of a person who has been waiting too long for something that may not come. He saw Taro. He saw Mugi. His expression changed. "Is that horse for sale?" he said. Taro stopped. The man explained. He was a merchant. He had to travel a considerable distance by tomorrow morning. His horse had gone lame. He had been trying to find another horse for hours. No one in the area had one to spare. He looked at Mugi with the particular hunger of a man who needs something specific. Taro looked at Mugi. He thought about the direction he had been given. Keep trading. Keep walking. Don't stop. He said, "The horse isn't for sale, but I might trade him." "For what?" the merchant said. "I don't know," Taro said honestly. "What do you have?" The merchant stared at him for a moment. Then he began to think. He had a great deal. He was a successful merchant. He had cloth. He had spices. He had lacquerware. He had a collection of small carved netsuke. He had coins. He looked at Taro. And then he said something unexpected. "I have a house." Part 8. The House. It turned out the merchant owned a house nearby. Not a large house, not an impressive house, but a house with a roof and walls and a small garden. The merchant had bought it as an investment. He had been meaning to sell it for some time. He had never gotten around to it. Now, standing outside his gate, watching this young man with the horse, he made a decision. "The house for the horse," he said. Taro looked at him. "It comes with the contents," the merchant added quickly. "Whatever is inside." "Is there anything inside?" Taro asked. "Furniture," the merchant said. "Some tools, a rice storage. Probably some rice in it. I'd have to check." Taro thought about this. He looked at Mugi, who looked back at him with calm, dark eyes. He looked at the road ahead, which wound away into the evening. He thought about what he had been carrying, what he was looking for, whether he was still looking for anything, or whether he had found it. He reached out and put his hand on Mugi's nose. "Take care of him," he said to the merchant. "He likes to be talked to." The merchant blinked. "What?" "When you ride," Taro said, "talk to him. He likes it." He handed over the rope. The merchant handed over the deed to the house. A house, from a horse, from a length of silk, from 3 mandarin oranges, from 1 dragonfly on a piece of straw. Part 9. Coming Home. The house was small, but it was solid. The roof didn't leak. The walls kept out the wind. The garden had been neglected, but it had good soil. Inside, there was a simple wooden bed, a table, 2 chairs, some cooking pots, a chest of drawers, a good knife, a lamp, and in the rice storage, a considerable amount of rice. Taro sat on the step of the house as the last of the evening light went. He held the piece of straw in his hand. He had kept it all along through every trade. He looked at it. One thin piece of straw, barely a weight at all, almost nothing, the beginning of everything. He thought about what had happened, not the trades themselves, though those had been interesting, but what they had taught him. He had started with nothing, and he had kept walking, and he had kept paying attention, and things had come to him, not because he was clever or powerful or lucky, but because he had been present. He had been where he was. He had seen what was in front of him. He had offered what he had, even when what he had was barely anything. And each time, the world had offered something back, not because it owed him anything, but because that, he had come to understand, is what the world does when you are paying attention, when you are walking, when you don't stop. Part 10. The Neighbors. In the morning, the neighbors came. They had seen someone moving into the empty house. They came to look. In the particular way of village people who are curious but polite enough to disguise it as welcome. They brought things. A woman brought a jar of pickled vegetables. An old man brought seeds for the garden. A family brought a pot of soup. Taro received all of it. He thanked them. He invited them in, though there was barely enough room. They talked. He learned their names. He told them his. He told them he was going to stay, if that was all right. They said, of course. After they left, he stood in the small house and looked around. The furniture, the pots, the lamp, the jar of pickled vegetables, the seeds, the pot of soup. He thought, this is more than I had yesterday, and yesterday I had more than the day before, and the day before that, I had a piece of straw. Part 11. The Garden. He planted the garden in spring. He used the seeds the old man had given him. He added his own, bought with a small portion of the rice, which he had traded carefully through the winter. The garden grew. It was not a spectacular garden. It was the kind of garden that grows when someone pays attention to it, notices when it's dry, pulls the weeds when they appear, talks to it occasionally, which he did, having picked up the habit from his time with Mugi. The vegetables came in well. He ate what he needed. He traded the rest. He kept trading. Not dramatically, not in the way that makes a good story. In the ordinary, patient way of a person who has learned that this is how things work. He grew over time comfortable, then comfortable enough to share, then comfortable enough to help. He helped the family with the small children when the father was sick. He gave seeds to the woman whose garden had flooded. He spent an afternoon helping the old man repair his fence. He did these things without calculation, not because he expected return, but because he had learned. This is what you do when you have something to give. Part 12. The Straw. He kept the piece of straw. He put it in a small box, lacquered wood. He had traded for it at the market, a good trade, and it had seemed like the right container. Sometimes, in the evenings, he would take it out, just to look at it. One thin piece of straw. He would hold it for a while, think about the temple, about the road, about Mugi, about the dragonfly, about the child's face when it saw the dragonfly, about all of it. He was not, he would have been the first to admit, a millionaire. The old version of his story said he became one, but that was the part that always seemed slightly beside the point. He was not rich in the way that word is usually meant, but he was warm and fed and connected to the people around him and in possession of a skill, hard won, that he suspected was worth more than any amount of money. The skill of paying attention, of being present, of offering what you have, even when what you have is barely anything, even when what you have is a piece of straw, and walking forward, keeping walking, not stopping. Part 13. Outro. The story is over now, but the road is still there, long and winding, full of ordinary days and unexpected moments and things you couldn't have predicted and people you haven't met yet. Take what you have. Walk forward. Keep your eyes open. Sleep now. The road will be there in the morning. Shh.